The main part of the exhibition is about semaphore and Morse code messages, and the reason I use these two systems of communication is because they are both associated with the sea and with ships, and the signaling and communication between ships as a historical method of communication. And the reason I'm interested in this is because I live on a ship for 15 years, and I've begun to understand more about these messaging systems, which are very, very particular to the kind of communication that is needed when you are traveling in the ocean, or when you have no other kind of technology or no visual means of communication. Obviously today we have digital technology, and there is no longer any need for this kind of communication. But I still think it's very interesting to use something like semaphore because it is a visual form of communication. If we have no technology at all, you can still signal to somebody by using your arms in different positions, and they understand the message if they are familiar with semaphore. So it's a very physical process of communication. I like the performative, the theatrical nature of this form of communication. With Morse code, it's a little bit different. Morse code is what we would call a sort of technical form of communication. It requires for the audio electrical signals, and for the visual, it requires lights to be flashed at different intervals. So it's a different kind of system, but it's also very similar to our digital technology. The Morse code is two symbols, a short burst of sound or a long burst of sound, or a short flash of light. Morse code is very different to semaphore because it requires some technical association. So if you're sending Morse code by electric signals, then you have to have the technology to generate the sound and also to receive the sound. And with the visual Morse code, you have to have lights that flash at different intervals. And it's only one short burst of sound and one long burst of sound, or it's one short flash of light and one long flash of light. So everything is a combination of these two elements, which is exactly the same as digital technology. Digital technology is ones and zeros, and the different combinations of ones and zeros give us all of our digital technology that we know. So it has a very similar structure to the way we communicate at the moment. So I think it's also important to look at the origins of how this came about. The other thing I'm interested in is how we translate those technologies, how we translate messages from, for instance, with Morse code, it was invented in France, so you have French translation, then English translation, then Mandarin translation, and so on. So there's lots of different layers of meaning and different layers of understanding attached to the same messages. And I like the way it can translate from one thing to another. First and last is the title of the exhibition, and that relates to the work which is the first Morse code message and the last Morse code message. So in the two rooms there is the first message and the last message, and the photographs which I made in Taichung last year, they are slightly different. They don't necessarily relate to the Morse code, because I'm using semaphore in those photographs, and the semaphore is a separate system, separate code system. So the first and last really refers to the Morse code part of the exhibition, but not so much to the photographs and the semaphore. Although I think the main part of the work is the Morse messages, so I use that as a title for everything. And I think maybe on a very simple level, it was my first visit to the south of Taiwan, and maybe also my last visit. So the first time I was there is maybe the last time that I will go there. So there is something that you can read into the photographs about being somewhere for a short period of time and coming away again. So the first and last is, in that case, the same thing. I probably will never stand on the same beach again. So it's a single occurrence, a moment in time. My time here at the museum has been very interesting, and I've been here 3 or 4 times before I made the exhibition. And I like the atmosphere of the museum because there are many people coming here to do a variety of different things. So I think some people can come to see exhibitions, but there's also lots of events and things happening as well. And I think it's a very interesting environment to engage with art in a very direct way. It feels much more accessible as a museum than some of the big kind of state museums where you feel a little bit intimidated sometimes by the museum. This museum seems very welcoming. It seems very easy to come in and to engage with the work. So I like the idea of the work being somewhere where people can engage directly. The gallery is a very intimate space. You can get very involved with the work. But to negotiate with the museum, to do something a little bit different and to try some new ways of presenting work. So I see it as a very experimental place as well, not just for coming to bring something, but actually to develop the ideas of the work with the people in the museum.